Welcome to Chalk and Code,
where the science of learning meets modern technology.
We're bringing together entrepreneurs, product leaders, researchers, and advocates
to spark ideas, challenge assumptions, and shape the future of learning. Welcome back to Chalk and Code, where we discuss new and novel approaches and directions in education, technology, and leadership. Today's guest is Christopher Psiaki, the Chief Technology Officer of Topia Interactive. Topia is a cloud-based spatial media platform that allows users to create customizable, persistent worlds for communication and collaboration in real time. Chris joins us today to discuss the technical evolution of this particular aspect of Topia, how Topia is designing virtual worlds for social connection, and most especially safety in K-12 or education generally, and the future of virtual offices and K-12 learning environments. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
It is a delight to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you, what's your background and how did you arrive at your position at Topia?
Yeah. So background is in software development. I guess, maybe video games before that. But I kind of grew up with software and computers generally sort of top of mind in the household. My father is a software developer himself. So, with him as an influence, my desire in school was always to kind of pick electives, as early as middle school that leaned into robotics, those little robotics kits that you would get, any kind of programming course. And so that, middle school turned into high school, turned into AP computer science, turned into computer science and business bachelor's degree. So I've always just been focused on kind of building a career in software. I did go into working for my father after college. He does ERP software. So his systems, his clients are kind of small, medium-sized businesses that run his ERP. I got just a ton of really great experience working in that industry, solving problems, building custom modules for businesses, manufacturing modules, inventory tracking, the full business process, soup to nuts. And it really taught me just a lot about how to, carefully keep track of data through its entire life cycle. Topia came about through a really great college friend of mine, Dan Liebeskin. He was also kind of into software development. He switched his career track from finance into sort of entrepreneurial product building. And when he did that, him and I actually, we were already good friends, but now we kind of shared this sort of desire to build product. So my side projects, his side projects were just things that we would always send each other. Anything that we were doing that was interesting and new and novel would be just a topic of conversation that we would excitedly share with each other. And so when he got, the kernel of Topia going, it was that next discussion. And when he first showed it to me, very early on, this was the thing I was compelled to get involved with. And so that was end of spring of 2020. And yeah, it's been kind of off to the races ever since, being in startup mode and just building.
With all of the things that get built in software, what was it about this one that grabbed you? I mean, you described it as the thing.
I have a long love of kind of video games in general. And just the sort of, World of Warcraft being one of them, the expansiveness of World of Warcraft and in general is like just kind of mind blowing to a degree that I saw the parallels with what was possible building at Topia. And so World of Warcraft didn't have like proximity chat as a feature, right? But it would have been really cool if it did. Topia is proximity based spatial communication at its core. And it's very fun. It's very exciting to join a Topia world for the first time and seeing all these people running around and connecting to people with audio and video, right? As you navigate spatially. And so the idea of infinite world building, infinite numbers of interconnected worlds, right? High scale, many participants simultaneously, massively multiplayer, right? Like all of those things are elements of the Topia platform, and they just resonate with me as a massively multiplayer online gaming fan. So that's where the excitement comes from.
All right, let's define for our audience that some of the at least one of the terms that we've both thrown around. I've seen. I'm going to use a quote: real-time spatial communication. Can you just, I mean, describe for for someone? I mean, since they're not seeing it as we're talking, describe it for them if you can.
Joining a Topia session, world, or page is very similar to joining a Google Meet in some ways, right? You land on a page, you configure your camera, your microphone, you type your name in, but then when you click enter, you get an avatar as opposed to just a square in the meeting room. And so your avatar is then inserted into a world that is built by the world builder, and you can walk around, interact with the world itself, interact with the games or mini games that are in the world, or in our case now, of course, curriculum, learning journeys, things like that, elements of the world and the environment. But then you're also going to see other avatars navigating the same space that you're in. And the big difference in the telecom sense between Topia and, say, the Google Meet that I mentioned before is that when you walk your avatar up to somebody else's avatar, their video comes in on your screen and your video on their screen. And now you guys can interact and talk and see each other. And if a third person were to walk up to your two avatars, now you're on a 3-way call and a 4-way call and so on and so forth. And disengaging from that call is not just closing the browser, which you could do, of course, but you could also just walk away and you see another avatar with somebody else's name or somebody that you wanted to talk to above their head, and you walk up to them and now you can engage with that person. And so, we can fit hundreds and thousands of participants simultaneously in these worlds, and you spatially interact with the people that you want to interact with. And we have tons of other features. You can make an announcement and then everybody will see and hear you. Like I said, lots of interactive sort of elements of the world, learning journeys, integrated and infused curriculum, lots of really engaging stuff there.
So that sounds much more natural than something like Zoom. It sounds like something that you would stay engaged in, throughout a much longer period of time, whereas a Zoom meeting might be, here's an hour block. Are there ways of sharing developers or teachers presenting, stuff to their students, or students sharing work that they're working on? Are there ways to do that inside this world?
Yeah, I would say that we have all the typical features of any one of these meeting platforms that we're all familiar with at this point. Screen sharing, of course, being one of them, or something I think you're relating to. So yeah, anybody can share their screen, full screen, current tab audio, all those types of features. And they can do so in this sort of elevated context that we call broadcasting, which allows an entire auditorium, let's say, of avatars to see a teacher's entire presentation, right? So 150 people in one world will all see the teacher, regardless of whether they're standing next to them or not. 2, 3, 4 people can be on broadcast at the same time. You can run a panel. Right. So we have all the bells and whistles of any telecom. And this specifically serves, kind of virtual school in a very big way right now. And sharing. We also, of course, infuse curriculum into the worlds, and our environments can launch into sort of third-party tools. So you can have Google Docs and Google Slides sort of part of the environment, right? So rather than sort of a web page with or an email with attachments that everybody opens, kind of at their own speed, you can actually open these things together in the same browser tab while you're connected to and interacting with your classmates or your teacher or your tutor or whatever the contextual makeup of the world you're in is set up for.
So I'm familiar with applications like Gather and SoWork, where those are kind of they feel like they're organized very much around corporate environments. Um, how do you adjust or adapt that kind of approach to the unique requirements in, say, a K-12 system where you have to be concerned about student privacy and control of data and, say, anti-bullying or the inappropriate use of direct messages, things like that? What kind of how do you make sure that the environment is safe in the K-12 sense?
Yeah, so we have a lot of stakeholders in edtech in K-12. The students being number one, we want to make something that's engaging, fun, something that they want to show up and use synchronously. Stakeholders include teachers as well. We need tools that are easy for them to use, easy for them to manage their sessions. And in that includes safety and moderation. And so, you know, in K-12, Topia.io is sort of our SaaS product, but we have the ability to fully white label our technology to a school system. So we deploy a complete replica of the software stack. It has no relation, no mingling with Topia.io, and that stack has features built in that allow you to run it in a sort of in a very tightly restrictive and closed way. So unless you are on a school's roster, you can't get into worlds in that system, right? Unless you are a 12th grader, you can't get into worlds that are built for and reserved for second graders.
Okay.
So 12th graders are not going to interact with second graders. Kids from different schools aren't going to interact with each other across the country. We have tool sets that are fully integrated with other ed tech providers to leverage the data and the makeup of who a student is to give them access to worlds that are built for them, for their classmates, and for their teacher. And so it's not, what I was describing before, World of Warcraft and, open worlds and anybody can go wherever they want. That's not actually how we deliver worlds to students in K-12.
Right. Okay. Since Chalk and Code is primarily concerned with edtech, let's dig into that particular topic a little bit more. I would love to know, for example, what an implementation in an education system or ecosystem would look like. I read that y'all had a partnership with Stride, I think. And I wondered if that was kind of like the typical sort of approach, because that's virtual schooling. It's kind of tailor-made for what you're doing, it seems.
Yeah. Stride has been a great relationship. It's been a pleasure to serve them and their students for 3 years now. First of all, they do run a white label version of the Topia platform. We deliver updates of our software to them regularly, every 2 weeks, and with fixes and bug fixes in between. Once the infrastructure is delivered and set up to run, the procurement of worlds, the customization of worlds, the injection of curriculum into worlds is actually pretty easy. Editing a world is as simple as taking a PNG and clicking and dropping it where you want it to be. We also have a very, very large library of kind of pre-configured scenes, small scenes that look like classrooms, larger scenes that look like auditoriums, and even larger scenes that look like full-blown campuses. Navigating between them, portaling from one world to another world, kind of becomes very natural for the ultimate end user, which is the student. And teachers all the while are able to kind of customize little bits of each environment as they want with very modest changes. It's certainly not like building a full world from scratch and 3D models and things like that. The actual delivery ultimately to the end user, which is the student, is pretty simple once that core infrastructure is set up.
Okay. Is that the primary approach to providing this service and this platform into edtech through other businesses, or are you selling, like I was looking at SchoolSpace, or is that kind of direct?
No, the SchoolSpace is our district, individual independent district product.
Okay.
So, school districts that aren't large enough, like a Stride is, but still want to leverage uh, an interactive engagement platform like we're talking about, they'll use SchoolSpace. And SchoolSpace is just as restrictive from a district perspective for safety and moderation. And like we have to have a relationship with the district. The district gives us things like SSO integrations or any one of the other kind of rostering providers. And then we provision worlds. We kind of handhold the district and the delivery of very specific worlds for their classes for their district. But there's none of the actual infrastructure delivery with something like SchoolSpace. It's basically district wants to provide interactive online engagement for students. Great. Later that day, they'll have worlds that are ready for their students. They can trust that it will be safely delivered to the right students and that it's easy and intuitive to use.
Okay, great. As I was reading about Topia and SchoolSpace and the relationship with Stride, I found myself wondering, are you doing both, or is it is what Stride doing? Is it like a branded version of SchoolSpace?
It's definitely white labeled, branded, and independent of SchoolSpace.
Okay.
Yeah.
So presumably you've got all of when you're with SchoolSpace, you are doing all of the normal integrations like with one roster to get updated student information and what classes they're in, what grade levels they're in, and you're using that to drive, for example, how to make sure that students in the appropriate grade level aren't being mixed in their experience with students from a different grade level. You're driving all of that. Are there other integrations that you kind of have cooked up and ready to go kind of out of the box for school districts, like to LMSs, things like that, so that the content can appear there as well?
Yeah, the LMS, obviously the big one. Yeah, we recently this summer built out LTI 1.3 compliance. So, launching into one of our sessions straight from a course, we can have, say, a world, a persistent world dedicated to that course that is sort of open, but only for students that are actually rostered in that course on the LMS. They can launch into it. We have a feature called chaperone mode where, like, if a teacher or a moderator is not in the world with students, then the connectivity layer is actually turned off. So you can walk around and you can see your classmates walking around, but when you walk up to them, you're not actually going to connect, right? Because there's no moderator present, right? So we can have persistent worlds like that, but we can also have worlds that are tied to calendar events. So a teacher can actually calendar a class session in SchoolSpace from 1 to 3 p.m. or 1 to 2 p.m. And everybody will see that alert in the LMS that class is starting. You click that, you launch into that session. Only rostered students can get into that session. And the world will only open for the time of that session, right? So this would be more of a closed experience in that sense. So I mean, one of the things we're working on from there is kind of driving a little bit more of the sort of assessment side of the house. It integrated experiences that actually result in scores coming back to the LMS. So not just the meeting room, but also the sort of experience of the curriculum, right? And the resulting outcome.
Okay. I want to, if you don't mind, I want to follow this path along K-12, most especially for the next few minutes, and then maybe we'll pull back and look at higher ed and maybe workforce education or workforce or implementations in the workplace. And the reason I want to continue on this path with K-12 in particular was because as I was listening to your founders, your friend Daniel. He was being interviewed by another podcaster, and one of the things that the interview was from 2021. It was with Nathan Lotka, and one of the things that struck me when they were talking about levels of engagement in these world buildings, one of the things he described was that I think I'm going to get this quote right. I hope so. He was not trying to build an attention economy. And that stuck with me because in K-12 or in learning environments generally, there's this balance between making something engaging and making sure that it serves the educational purpose. That kids spend enough time in it, but not so much time that they're spending it inappropriately. And I know that you gave a presentation in February at the Digital Learning Annual Conference, Fostering Community and Combating Student Apathy Through Safe, Engaging Multiplayer Learning Experiences. I wonder if you could tie those things together, the engagement with balancing that commitment to kind of not trying to create an attention economy.
Yeah. Well, this is where, the infusion of the telecom directly into the experience kind of comes in prominently, right? We want human connection, human to human, peer to peer connection to be, the central value add of our platform. We want to teach kids to be human. We don't want it to be sort of transactional in the way that a lot of software is, right? Like asynchronous software is all about, the message that you consume sometime after it was sent and, whatever you leave as an artifact for, that person to respond to sometime later. We want human engagement on our platform that feels natural. It can feel as structured as Zoom if you want it to, if that's the particular type of experience that you need to deliver. But Zoom breakouts, for example, are very unnatural, right? You click the breakout button, everybody goes into a separate room. You as the teacher, you see a list of rooms and numbers of participants in particular places, but you don't ever feel like you're actually breaking out in the way that you feel like you're breaking out when you're in a classroom and the teacher asks you to put your desks together, right? You're still in the classroom, you still feel the presence of your classmates and the teacher, but now you're in these smaller groups, and the energy of being in the class and in your group is different, and it's something that Zoom, for example, can't really replicate. But with our avatars, with the natural movement and the energy in our experience, it is more easily replicatable, and it is more like being in a room with other people. It is more naturally engaging in that way. So that kind of human connection, that kind of more natural thing is what we strive.
Have you seen any behaviors emerge online that surprised you? It's like, oh, we didn't expect that, or
certainly the kids and very young kids are trying all the time to stress the system as much as possible, as much as they can. That I certainly didn't expect, just from the sort of technical ghost trying to keep the system on and alive. I assumed that many people would be using it simultaneously, but I certainly didn't expect, children to get curious enough to try to stress it out. That was it's always very entertaining and honestly kind of rewarding to know that there are kids that are that interested in the product that you're building, that they want to figure out how it works, really. I mean, ultimately, nobody's trying to like break it per se, but they're trying to flex it, right? And in that learning process, I did not think that kids were going to kind of attempt to do those types of things, but they are, and it's always fun.
Give me an example of that. Is that like kids piling into a session where everybody's got their video on and trying to play a game all at the same time? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, one neat little feature we have is sort of the follow feature, where you can invite others to follow you around, and as many people as can try to leverage that, do it. And so you'll just see packs of people following one avatar, right? And I kind of assumed, early on that this would be, a useful thing to give somebody kind of a tutorial of the platform. Here's where we do this. Here's where we do that. But I didn't expect it to evolve into kind of like a game and like how big can this crowd get? And so, early on, you would see these kinds of waves of system activity in a particular world. And you're like, whoa, what is going on in there? And it's, the kids doing a thing that you just didn't necessarily expect them to do.
That's great. That sounds like a giant conga line.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. Yeah, it's really great.
Oh, wow. I would have never thought about that either. Oh, okay. So let's shift from that into the kind of the overarching benefit of kids who participate in one of these virtual worlds, on their sense of belonging, and how that becomes part of. I don't want to describe it strictly as a value proposition, but when it comes to how products and services actually help support, and improve the learning environment itself, it seems to me that, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that this kind of product can connect kids in a slightly different way, than even face to face, in real life interactions might. Perhaps it drops some of the barriers to going up and talking to somebody. I don't know. I'm simply kind of wondering aloud what kinds of improvements or changes or impacts y'all have seen on, say, the perception of the learning environment or their sense of belonging or even their academic output.
Certainly on the social side, like removing barriers to approaching others and peers is something our platform is very good at. Even in a more social world, a break time world, let's say, or a homeroom or a study hall world, there could be a mini game there, right? And two people want to engage with that mini game, and it's located in the same spot, or it's located in one spot in that world, and right away you have a sort of social, interactive experience that you're both there. Naturally, you both connect to each other, you see each other, and now you have this experience that you're sharing, right? It's not a cold, hi, who are you? It's, what are we doing together, right? So that certainly breaks down barriers and more approachable right off the bat. When the software that you use to attend your class feels like the school you attend, you also have more sense of ownership of your own personality in that platform, in that world, right? So we're kind of going to is this movement of product building, especially in virtual and alternative education markets, hybrid education, where we want to make the online version of curriculum engagement and social engagement feel very tightly integrated to the school itself, if not and in the virtual sense, the actual school. And so, yes, there are these worlds. Yes, there are these connective layers and interactive layers between you and others, and you and the school and the platform itself. But there's also you, yourself, your account, the things that you've earned on the platform, the things that your teacher has kind of given you, right? Because you made it to class every single day this month, right? Like here's a shirt, for your avatar that only you and 10 other children are going to get from my class, right? And now you're kind of building this sort of environment that is tightly woven into your experiences with your teacher, with your class, with your classmates, and so we're building product to kind of enhance that experience. We are listening to the feedback of our students, the feedback of our teachers, the feedback of our districts and providers, and we're trying to basically make the uh, delivery of school online much more delightful, and ultimately that delight will have better outcomes, better learning outcomes for the people that participate in it.
Are there particular areas where you're growing, where Topia is growing the most right now? Are there particular catalysts that are driving that growth? Oh, I'm thinking about, every once in a while, the federal government through the Department of Education will provide funding to school districts to upgrade their technology, and you'll see this enormous wave of technology acquisition. And that's like, it's a catalyst that's legislative. I'm wondering if there, aside from general market trends, if there's something like that that's driving some of your business.
Yeah. Well, the sort of parent choice ESA accounts are definitely just a structural change in education that certainly we want to try to appeal to. Giving access, being telecom, giving access to tutoring, better tutoring, giving access to resources that are beyond what you have immediately available through these funds would certainly, that's certainly something we're paying attention to, and we see in edtech the market in general is moving towards just internally have kind of a marketplace of user generated content, right? So what we've recently turned on the ability for teachers to sort of publish the worlds that they create. So in the same way that Minecraft allows for a huge sort of creator economy, we want educators that are so inclined to build worlds and use their imagination to construct a new way to learn a given topic. We want them to be able to show that off, to deliver it to other teachers, right? So you'll have, for every one teacher that decides to create a sort of, Independence Hall world and, featuring the Declaration of Independence, they'll be able to deliver that built, structured world to 1,000 other teachers very easily, right? And for their classes. So that's certainly more of an internal avenue for growth, which is giving the most creative teachers the tools to be able to build experiences that thousands beyond them will be able to leverage.
Okay. I've asked you a lot of questions that are really focused on K-12, but I know you're, this will work in higher education just as well. Now, is the implementation very different, or is the goal very different? For the end users who start this, like, is in higher ed, is it entire school that picks this up, or is it an individual professor for a course? I'm sure it can handle both of those use cases, but do you see one pattern or the other, or are there others?
Yeah, well, what we see in K-12 generally is, like K through 8 students in particular really love, kind of like the unstructured time. Because we are the one platform that is multiplayer that makes unstructured time engaging and fun, right? The older you get, slightly more structure to your experience you want. So, as we continue infusing more of the LMS content, as we continue building out very structured sort of learning journeys, those things are going to appeal to higher ed and corporate. Those templates, those more, just more structured experiences will appeal more to those markets for sure. But the core of the platform and the technology that we're building is designed to be adaptable, sometimes too adaptable, but to the particular use case. So the tools are there to build an experience of really any kind, and the audience then, the end users kind of determines what type of experience you'll build with the tools that we're building here.
Okay. What do you think are the challenges that Topia is going to face with this platform, say over the next 1 to 5, 5 to 10 years? What are you preparing for?
We've always focused very much on scalability at low cost. Telecom can be very expensive, of course. Video recording, being able to host a class synchronously is very good, but you do also have requirements to have the ability for a student to digest the same material asynchronously. So, recording the teacher and making that available within the course, within the all things like that. But we have focused on scalability at cost, and so we've done very well with that. I mean, one of the reasons we do so well in edtech is that integrating our product does not break the bank, right? Because our world servers are very efficient. Our telecom is very efficient. We put a lot of care, a lot of time, a lot of hours into making sure that we balance this well. One of the things I do see in 1 to 5 years, of course, everybody sees it, and finally we talk about it at the 40th minute here, is AI. How are we going to integrate AI? How are we going to leverage it? How are our students going to experience it through our platform? How are schools going to be able to bear the cost of running AI? Those are kind of like the frontier things that we're thinking about here. Obviously our worlds very naturally can, or you can imagine naturally hosting sort of AI-backed NPCs, sort of non-player avatars kind of walking around, in this Independence Hall scenario I'm talking about. Perhaps there's an avatar of Thomas Jefferson, and when you walk up to it, you can actually talk to him, and contextually he's built to behave and respond like a Thomas Jefferson would if he were alive today, right? But how do you do that in a way that is cost effective for schools, right? How do you do that easily, right? How do you make the building of experiences easy to do with that kind of power behind it? How do you make it safe, of course, right? Like, you certainly don't want kids are going to stress the system. They're going to try to see where the edges are on any AI product. I mean, you see this as a core issue for any product builder in AI now, which is, what are the guardrails for kids? Not just, from a safety perspective, but also from a learning perspective. You don't want to just hand AI over to children because, they won't learn anything. But you also don't want to deprive them of these advanced tools because then they won't learn how the world works, right? So where's that line, right? And so, I see that as being certainly in the 1 to 5 years. How are we going to leverage this to the benefit of the children that use our platform?
Are you at the beginning of that investigation, or do you already have a line of thought that you're pursuing?
No, I mean, we've been playing with these things for, couple years now. Certainly playing with the APIs. I have an NVIDIA GPU in the other room that I bought so I could host things myself and tinker, yeah, and we've been playing with this stuff quite a bit. We're going to continue to, but with great care and a lot of thought. And we've got plenty of stuff on our roadmap that are things that we want to do in the near term, and we'll get there.
Those in most of the cases where I talk to other people in your position, one of the things that they've all kind of stressed the same kind of concern. We all know this is clearly on everybody's roadmap. Everybody's trying to figure out how to incorporate it in a way that's safe in this particular kind of environment. Everybody's got concerns about just kind of turning an AI on and letting people use it without having some kind of human intermediary between the learner and the AI. So it's certainly something that everybody is trying to figure out right this moment. How in the world would you? Let's pursue that example about Thomas Jefferson. How would you develop a virtual Thomas Jefferson that responded like Thomas Jefferson? How much material would you have to feed to that particular LLM so that it could respond like Jefferson and basically represent Jefferson accurately?
It's not that easy. You have to go beyond just prompting to do that. So these things are going to take time. There's also a lot of people that are working on these things. There's pretty notorious companies like Character AI and a lot of things out there that are doing this kind of stuff very well. What we really want to do with it, aside from making them very accurate, is also make them multiplayer, right? We want Thomas Jefferson to answer, but then for everybody that's around him to hear it, right? It's very unnatural in a multiplayer setting for everybody to be having their own conversation with an instance of Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, right.
So we want to kind of make it more of like a social kind of experience, and so that involves a lot of trickery. It involves a lot of kind of context tracking and speaker identification. Just complicated kind of stuff. And so that's kind of one of the things we're focusing on with it. How it's experienced. Like you said, the control of the LLM, the guardrails on that LLM. For example, you can't really ask Thomas Jefferson about Albert Einstein, but if you don't design your Thomas Jefferson right, Thomas Jefferson will start talking about relativity all day, and it'll feel very weird.
But that could be absolutely fascinating, especially in this context, if you could get two LLMs from the same period to talk to one another, say Jefferson and Adams, talking about the election of 1800 and the dirty tricks that went on and the midnight appointments and their what happened to their long-standing friendship and the fallout from the election. That would be absolutely intriguing if you could make that work.
The bones of that I have played with. I haven't shipped any product like this, but the bones of having two independent LLMs standing next to each other in a Topia world, and then you kind of like kick off a conversation by addressing one of them first, and then that one kind of starts talking, the other one hears it and then responds to it. That interaction works, right? And then I, as a participant in the Topia world, I can walk away, I can come back about a half hour later and they're still going at it, right? Like you know what I mean? And so we have that. Now the structure around making sure that Ben Franklin stays as Ben Franklin and knows the things that Ben Franklin knew while he was alive, that's obviously far more difficult.
What an interesting idea. So for as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you the question that we ask every guest, and that is, what should we be talking more about in education and technology that we aren't talking about?
The importance of human connection, I think, is the big one when we talk about like use of digital products. keeping that at the center of the use of that product, making it feel more natural to experience curriculum together, making it feel integrated with the teacher and the class and the school that you're at. Right now, an LMS, any LTI integrated tool can be launched from an LMS, right? But now, there's this huge disparity of, learning all these different tools, right? And which tool is the right thing to use for the a particular thing or task or activity, right? We aim to kind of be sort of this fabric of school online. We want to make it a lot more natural to interact with the software. Integration platform as a service, like the MuleSoft of edtech, right? All of these different tools and very naturally delivering them through a unified experience layer. With human connection and peer-to-peer connectivity at the center of that is something that we strive to do. We think it's something that is missing from all of these other tools. We think that all of these other tools do their specific jobs well. We want to be part of an ecosystem and give a platform that enhances the experience of all tools through sort of an engagement and interactive fabric between them. That's kind of our goal personally, and I think that in a lot of cases, in edtech in particular, we see that missing from an individual's experience with a course. It feels isolating, and we want to enhance the human experience with those tools.
Right. Well, Chris Psiaki, CTO of Topia Interactive, thank you for joining us here on Chalk and Code today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. It was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
It's been a delight. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If today's conversation sparked new insights or challenged your thinking, we'd love to hear from you.
Visit flexion.us for more information and join us here next time on Chalk and Code.